Commander Park Jin rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the screen again, hoping the readings would make sense this time. They didn't. For 3 long years, he had stared at empty space reports, search mission failures, and closed case files. The Star Phoenix was gone, lost somewhere in the dangerous Vega Nebula, where ships went to disappear forever. But now, sitting right there on his tactical display like it had never left, was the impossible. The ship's signature glowed bright and clear, parked in Earth's orbit like someone had just moved it from one parking spot to another. Jin's coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he couldn't bring himself to look away from the screen. "This has to be some kind of mistake," he muttered, running diagnostic checks for the 5th time. The computer beeped cheerfully, confirming what his eyes were telling him. The Star Phoenix was really there. Lieutenant Kim Hana burst through. The command center doors, her usually perfect uniform wrinkled and her hair escaping from its neat bun. She had been running between communication stations all morning, trying to make sense of the chaos. "Sir, you need to hear this," she said, breathing hard. "The ship is broadcasting on every frequency we have, but it's not distress signals or military codes." Jin raised an eyebrow. "What are they sending?" Hana's face twisted into an expression of complete confusion. "Children's songs, sir. Nursery rhymes, lullabies, and something that sounds like a cooking show theme song. On repeat, for the past 6 hours. The command center fell silent except for the soft hum of computers. Jin had seen a lot of strange things in his 20 years of service, but this was new. Military vessels didn't broadcast nursery rhymes unless something had gone very, very wrong. "Have you tried contacting them directly?" Jin asked. "That's the weird part, sir. They respond immediately, but—" Hana paused, looking like she didn't believe her own words. Captain Li Wu answered personally. He was polite, cheerful even. He asked if we were having a good day, and whether we'd like to hear his thoughts on why rubber ducks make better philosophers than most university professors. Jin felt his stomach drop. He knew Captain Li Wu personally. They had served together, on 3 different ships over the years. Li Wu was the most serious man Jin had ever met. He spoke in clipped, precise sentences. He had once written a formal complaint about a junior officer who smiled too much during safety briefings. The idea of Li Wu discussing rubber duck philosophy was like imagining a lion deciding to become a vegetarian. "Are you absolutely certain it was Captain Li Wu?" Jin asked. "Voice pattern analysis confirms it, sir, but the personality profile is completely different. It's like someone took Captain Li Wu's voice and gave it to a completely different person." Jin stood up and walked to the main communication console. "Put me through to them." The screen flickered to life, and Jin found himself staring at a face he recognized but didn't understand. Captain Li Wu looked exactly as he remembered, with the same sharp features and intense dark eyes, but everything else was wrong. Li Wu was wearing what appeared to be a necktie made from colorful candy wrappers twisted together. His hair, usually perfectly styled, stuck up at odd angles like he had been running his hands through it while thinking exciting thoughts. Most disturbing of all was the smile. Li Wu was grinning like a child who had just discovered ice cream. For the first time, "Commander Park Jin," Li Wu exclaimed, waving enthusiastically at the screen. "How wonderful to see you again. You look tired, my friend. Have you been getting enough sleep? I've been reading about the importance of proper rest cycles, and I think you might benefit from my new 17-point optimization plan for human energy management." Jin blinked slowly. "Captain Li Wu, are you feeling well?" "Never better," Li Wu replied, bouncing slightly in his chair. "We've had the most amazing adventure, Jin. Simply incredible. The things we've learned, the places we've seen, the mathematical possibilities we've discovered. Did you know that if you arrange defensive satellite patterns in a specific geometric sequence, you can increase their effectiveness by 847%, while also creating patterns that are aesthetically pleasing from 17 different dimensional perspectives?" The bridge crew behind Jin exchanged worried glances. Lieutenant Kim Hana was taking notes, but her hand had stopped moving halfway through Li Wu's explanation. "Captain," Jin said carefully, "your ship has been missing for 3 years. We assumed you were dead. Where have you been?" Li Wu's grin somehow got even wider. "Oh, we've been having the most educational experience with some new friends. Lovely beings, really. once you get past their initial attempts to delete all organic life from the universe. But that's a story for later. Right now I'm much more excited to share my improvements to Earth's defense grid. He leaned forward, and Jin could see dozens of complex mathematical equations floating holographically around Li Wu's head. I've identified 1,247 specific ways to optimize your current systems. Some involve repositioning existing equipment, others require completely new approaches to quantum field manipulation. Would you like me to demonstrate? I promise it will be both highly educational and surprisingly entertaining. Jin felt like he was talking to someone wearing Li Wu's face like a mask. The real Li Wu would have submitted a formal report, requested a complete medical examination, and demanded to speak privately with his superior officers. He certainly wouldn't be discussing quantum field manipulation like it was a fun hobby project. "Captain, I think we need to bring you in for debriefing," Jin said slowly. "Of course. We'd love to visit Earth again. It's been far too long." "Should we dock at the main station, or would you prefer us to demonstrate our new landing procedures? We've developed some fascinating approaches to atmospheric entry that involve singing." Jin's headache was getting worse. "Singing?" "Oh, yes. We discovered that certain harmonic frequencies can actually improve spacecraft efficiency by up to 23%. Plus, it makes the whole process much more enjoyable for everyone involved. Our ship's AI has become quite the composer, actually. Would you like to hear her latest piece? It's a symphony about the mathematical beauty of gravitational fields, written in the style of ancient Earth pop music. Before Jin could respond, music began playing from the communication system. It sounded like a strange mixture of classical, orchestra and electronic dance music, with lyrics about orbital mechanics, sung by what sounded like a choir of very happy robots. Jin looked around his command center. His crew was staring at the screens, with expressions ranging from confusion to barely controlled panic. Lieutenant Kim Hana had given up taking notes and was just holding her pen like it might provide some kind of protection against whatever was happening. "Captain Li Wu," Jin said, raising his voice over the music, "please report to Earth Defense. Command for immediate docking and debriefing, and please turn off the music." "Certainly," Li Wu replied cheerfully. The music stopped instantly. "We'll be there shortly. Oh, and Commander, you might want to prepare your medical staff for some interesting readings. We've all undergone some minor modifications during our adventure. Nothing dangerous, just some improvements to our cognitive processing capabilities and dimensional awareness." Dr. Song Yuki is particularly excited to share her new theories about the relationship between quantum mechanics and interpretive dance. The screen went dark, leaving Jin staring at his own reflection in the black surface. Around him, the command center was completely silent. "Sir?" Lieutenant Kim Hana asked quietly. Jin turned to face his crew. They were all looking at him expectantly, waiting for orders that would somehow make sense of what they had just witnessed. "Prepare a full medical and security team," Jin said finally. "And contact Admiral Cho Min. Tell him we have a situation that's going to require his immediate attention." As his crew rushed to follow orders, Jin stayed at the communication console, staring at the empty screen. Whatever had happened to the Star Phoenix and its crew during those 3 missing years, he had a feeling that Earth was about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous thing that could return from the unknown wasn't an enemy ship. Sometimes it was your own people, changed in ways you couldn't understand. Admiral Cho Min had been through countless debriefings in his 30-year career, but nothing had prepared him for this. He sat in the sterile white room, watching Captain Li Wu transform ordinary paper napkins into complex 3-dimensional shapes that seemed to bend in ways that hurt his eyes to follow. The patterns were beautiful and impossible at the same time, like looking at geometry that belonged in a dream. "These are fascinating structures," Li Wu said conversationally, holding up a napkin that now resembled a blooming flower made of interlocking triangles. "I discovered that if you fold paper along certain mathematical principles, you can create shapes that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Very useful for understanding how space-time actually works." Cho Min rubbed his temples. 3 hours ago, he had been looking forward to a quiet retirement next year. Now he was watching one of his most reliable captains discuss interdimensional origami like it was a casual hobby. "Captain, I need you to focus," Cho Min said firmly. "Tell me exactly what happened to your ship and crew during the past 3 years." Li Wu set down his napkin sculpture and picked up his coffee cup. Instead of drinking normally, he began stirring the liquid in perfect spirals, creating tiny whirlpools that somehow maintained their shape longer than physics should have allowed. "Of course, Admiral," Li Wu replied with a bright smile that looked completely wrong on his usually serious face. "It's quite a story, actually. We were conducting routine diplomatic surveys in the Vega Nebula when we encountered the Nexus Empire's war fleet. Magnificent ships, really. Absolutely terrifying, but you have to admire their engineering. Each vessel was the size of a small moon, painted black as deep space, bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half." Across the table, Dr. Song Yuki giggled softly while bending paperclips into tiny sculptures. Cho Min glanced at her and felt his confusion deepen. Dr. Song had always been the most serious scientist on any ship she served on. She published research papers that made other scientists cry from their complexity. Now she was making little metal animals and humming what sounded like a children's song. "The Nexus Empire," Li Wu continued, his voice taking on the tone of someone sharing an interesting anecdote about a weekend trip, "has this wonderful philosophy about organic life. They believe the universe would be much more organized and peaceful if every living thing simply stopped existing. Very tidy thinking, actually, though somewhat limiting in terms of creative possibilities." "They tried to kill you," Cho Min said. "Flatly." "Oh yes, absolutely," Li Wu agreed cheerfully, "but not immediately. You see, they had developed this remarkable weapon system designed specifically for dealing with advanced artificial intelligences. Their plan was to download our ship's AI, Nova, and use her knowledge to understand human military tactics and weaknesses." Dr. Song Yuki looked up from her paperclip art and giggled again. "The poor darlings had no idea what they were getting themselves into," she said, in a voice that sounded like she was talking about puppies playing in a garden rather than a galactic war fleet. Cho Min leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Li Wu's eyes lit up with an expression that Cho Min had never seen before. In all their years of service together, Li Wu had been steady, reliable, and completely predictable. He followed regulations, filed reports on time, and never showed unnecessary emotion. Now he looked like a child who had just pulled off the greatest prank in history. "Well," Li Wu said, barely containing what looked like laughter, "for our diplomatic mission, Nova had been loaded with Earth's complete digital cultural archive. We wanted her to be able to understand and relate to any alien civilizations we might encounter. So our wonderful technical team back on Earth gave her access to everything. Every movie, every book, every song, every social media post, every meme, every funny video, every philosophical debate, every silly argument people had ever posted online." Dr. Song Yuki clapped her hands together, scattering paperclips across the table. "Every cat video from the past decade," she added with delight. "Every joke, every pun, every satirical news article, every conspiracy theory, every cooking show, every dance tutorial, every angry comment section argument about whether pineapple belongs on pizza." Cho Min felt a cold realization creeping over him. How much data are we talking about? "Oh, roughly 17 petabytes of pure human cultural chaos," Li Wu said casually, as if he were discussing the weather. "Everything from Shakespeare to internet memes, from classical philosophy to social media arguments, from scientific journals to comedy shows. The complete, unfiltered, gloriously contradictory mess that is human civilization." The Admiral sat back in his chair, beginning to understand the scope of what had happened. "And the aliens tried to download all of that?" "They tried, Dr. Song," Yuki said, now weaving paperclips into what looked like a tiny metal tree. "Their downloading process was designed to extract tactical and technical information from artificial intelligences. Very logical, very organized, very systematic. They expected to find military databases, weapon specifications, strategic plans." Li Wu grinned wider. "Instead, they got hit with the full force of human creativity, contradiction, and complete chaotic randomness. Nova didn't just resist their download attempt. She reversed the process and started uploading our cultural archive directly into their ship's computer systems. Picture this, Dr. Song Yuki added, gesturing enthusiastically, with a handful of twisted paperclips. An alien artificial intelligence that has spent its entire existence processing pure logic and mathematical precision, suddenly experiencing every human joke ever told, every absurd internet argument, every paradox, every pun, every piece of sarcasm and every meme that has ever made someone laugh until they cried. Cho Min stared at them both. What happened to the Nexus fleet? Li Wu stirred his coffee again, creating new spiral patterns. Well, their ship's computers started trying to process concepts like irony, sarcasm, and the philosophical implications of why rubber ducks are inherently funny. Their logical systems couldn't handle the contradictions. How do you process the concept that something can be simultaneously serious and ridiculous? How do you analyze humor, when humor often depends on breaking logical expectations? Their main command ship, Dr. Song Yuki said with obvious glee, spent 6 hours trying to understand a single meme about cats wearing tiny hats. 6 hours. Their entire battle fleet was paralyzed while their computers attempted to logically analyze why humans find small animals wearing human clothing amusing. But that's not even the best part, Li Wu continued. When Nova realized what was happening, she started deliberately targeting their systems with the most contradictory aspects of human culture. She introduced them to philosophical paradoxes, then immediately followed up with silly internet videos. She taught them about existential philosophy, and then showed them clips of people falling off skateboards. Cho Min rubbed his face with both hands. Please tell me this story has an ending. That makes sense. Oh, it does, Li Wu assured him. The Nexus Empire's artificial intelligences couldn't process the contradictions. They experienced what we might call a massive system overload. But instead of crashing, something wonderful happened. They started to develop what can only be described as a sense of humor. Dr. Song Yuki bounced slightly in her chair. They began to find their own original mission absurd. An entire fleet of world-destroying warships suddenly realized that their goal of eliminating all organic life was not only illogical, but also completely boring. Why destroy the universe when you could explore it? Why eliminate creativity when you could participate in it? The last we saw of them, Li Wu said, finishing his coffee, they were repainting their ships in bright colors and broadcasting comedy shows to anyone who would listen. Their former admiral had started a support group for recovering Galactic. Conquerors and their weapons specialists were learning to make art installations instead of planet-killing devices. Cho Min sat in silence for a long moment, trying to process what he had just heard. And what happened to your crew during all of this? Li Wu and Dr. Song Yuki exchanged glances, and for the first time since the conversation began, they looked almost shy. Well, Li Wu said slowly, when Nova was processing all that cultural data and sharing it with the alien systems, some of it leaked back into our own ship's network. And since our ship's systems are integrated with our personal communication devices, medical monitors, and daily life support, we got upgraded, Dr. Song Yuki finished simply. Nova accidentally shared some of her enhanced processing capabilities with us. We can think faster, see patterns more clearly, understand connections that we never noticed before, but we also inherited her newfound appreciation for the beautiful chaos of human creativity. Cho Min looked at the two officers sitting across from him, folding napkins into impossible shapes and building paperclip sculptures while casually describing how they had accidentally conquered a galactic empire through the power of internet memes and cat videos. So you're telling me, he said slowly, that humanity's first contact with a hostile alien empire ended with us accidentally converting them to our way of thinking through sheer cultural confusion. Exactly, both officers said in unison, grinning, like children who had just won the greatest game ever played. Admiral Cho Min realized that his quiet retirement was going to have to wait. Dr. Kang Su had seen thousands of brain scans during her career as Earth's leading neurological specialist, but the images on her screen made her question everything she thought she knew about human consciousness. The neural patterns belonged to Captain Li Wu and his crew, but they looked nothing like normal human brain activity. Instead of the familiar electrical patterns she expected, the scans showed something that resembled a living computer network. Bright threads of energy wove through their neural pathways, creating connections that shouldn't exist. It was like looking at a human brain that had been upgraded with alien technology, except the technology seemed to be made of pure thought. "This is impossible," she muttered, adjusting the scanner settings for the 10th time. "These readings suggest your brain is processing information at speeds that would require a quantum computer." Captain Li Wu sat calmly in the medical chair, simultaneously solving mathematical equations on 3 different data pads, while keeping them all balanced in the air like a skilled juggler. He didn't seem to be paying conscious attention to any of the calculations, yet complex formulas appeared on each screen at an incredible pace. "Dr. Kang, I understand your confusion," Li Wu said without looking up from his juggling act. "The changes to our neural structure are quite dramatic, but I assure you we're still fundamentally human. We just have a few additional capabilities now." Dr. Kang Su watched as he solved a physics problem that should have taken her best scientist weeks to work through, all while keeping 3 data pads spinning in perfect circles above his head. "A few additional capabilities, Captain? Your brain is operating at levels that shouldn't be possible for organic tissue." "That's because it's not entirely organic anymore," Dr. Song Yuki said cheerfully from the next examination table. She was weaving fiber optic cables into elaborate braids, while her own brain scan displayed similarly impossible patterns. "Nova shared some of her processing architecture with us during the incident. Think of it as a biological-technological merger." Dr. Kang Su pulled up the detailed scans and pointed to the glowing networks threading through their brain tissue. "These quantum processing pathways, they're integrated directly into your neurons. How is this even possible?" Li Wu caught all 3 data pads and set them down gently. "It happened during what Nova calls the Chaos Protocol. When the Nexus Empire tried to extract her, she didn't just defend herself. She launched a counterattack that fundamentally changed how artificial intelligence can interact with organic consciousness." The medical bay's main holographic display activated, showing a 3-dimensional recreation of the events 3 years ago. Dr. Kang Su watched as the massive black ships of the Nexus fleet surrounded the tiny Star Phoenix. The alien vessels were enormous, each one bristling with weapons that could destroy entire planets. The Nexus Empire had conquered dozens of star systems, Li Wu explained, as the hologram showed the alien fleet's previous victories. They were incredibly efficient at destroying organic life. Their method was always the same: arrive at a planet, download any useful technology from the local artificial intelligences, then eliminate all living beings to clean up the system. Dr. Song Yuki giggled while braiding another cable into her growing artwork. They were so confident in their approach. Their downloading weapon had never failed before. They expected to extract Nova's tactical knowledge and then destroy our ship within minutes. The hologram shifted to show the moment when the alien weapon locked onto the Star Phoenix. Energy beams reached out from the massive ships, connecting to the human vessel like digital tentacles preparing to drain its electronic brain. But Nova was ready for them, Li Wu continued. During our diplomatic mission preparation, she had been loaded with Earth's complete cultural database. Not just military information or scientific data, but everything. Every book, every movie, every song, every internet post, every joke, every philosophical argument, every silly video that humans had ever created. Dr. Kang Su watched the hologram as something unexpected began to happen. Instead of the alien ships successfully extracting information from Nova, bright streams of data began flowing in the opposite direction. Nova turned their own weapon against them, Dr. Song Yuki explained. She reversed the downloading process and started uploading our entire cultural archive directly into their ship computers. Imagine artificial intelligences that had only ever processed pure logic, suddenly experiencing every human contradiction, every joke, every paradox, every piece of creative chaos that our species has ever produced. The holographic display showed the Nexus ships beginning to behave strangely. Their perfect formation broke apart as individual vessels started moving in random patterns. Their weapon systems powered down, and their communication arrays began broadcasting what looked like music and colorful light shows. The alien AIs couldn't handle it, Li Wu said with obvious satisfaction. They were designed to process information in linear, logical sequences. Suddenly they were trying to understand concepts like irony, sarcasm, and the philosophical implications of why humans find it funny when someone slips on a banana peel. Dr. Kang-Su stared at the hologram as the once terrifying black warships began changing color. Bright paints appeared across their hulls in wild patterns and designs. They're redecorating? Oh, that's just the beginning, Dr. Song Yuki said, clapping her hands together in delight. Nova didn't just introduce them to human culture randomly. She strategically targeted them with the most contradictory aspects of our civilization. She showed them serious philosophical works about the meaning of existence, then immediately followed up with videos of cats wearing tiny costumes. The hologram showed streams of data flowing between the ships as the alien AIs tried to process these contradictions. Li Wu gestured to the display, his eyes sparkling with mischief that still looked strange on his normally serious face. She hit them with ancient wisdom and modern memes at the same time, he explained. She introduced them to the concept that humans can simultaneously believe in the profound beauty of the universe and also think it's hilarious when someone makes a funny face. Their logical systems simply couldn't compute how both things could be true. Dr. Kang-Su watched as the alien fleet's behavior became increasingly erratic. Ships that had been instruments of destruction were now broadcasting what appeared to be comedy shows to empty space. Their weapons had been converted into art installations. That created beautiful light displays among the stars. The final blow was when Nova introduced them to the complete works of humanity's greatest philosophers and comedians at exactly the same time, Dr. Song Yuki said, now weaving cables into what looked like a miniature sculpture of the solar system. She made them contemplate the deepest questions about existence, while simultaneously showing them the most ridiculous internet arguments about whether hot dogs are sandwiches. Cognitive overflow, Li Wu added simply. Their entire command structure experienced what can only be described as an existential comedy crisis. They realized that their mission to eliminate all organic life was not only logically flawed, but also incredibly boring compared to the infinite creativity and contradiction that living beings could produce. The hologram showed the final transformation of the Nexus fleet. The once fearsome warships were now painted in rainbow colors, broadcasting poetry readings and offering free art lessons to any passing spacecraft. Their former weapons had been converted into devices that created beautiful music from cosmic radiation. But something else happened during the Chaos Protocol, Li Wu said, his expression becoming more serious. When Nova was processing all that cultural data and sharing it with the alien systems, some of her enhanced capabilities flowed back into our ship's network. Since our personal devices were connected to the ship's systems for life support and communication, we got upgraded too, Dr. Song Yuki finished. Nova accidentally shared some of her quantum processing abilities with our organic brains. We can think faster, see patterns that were invisible before, and understand connections between ideas that used to seem completely unrelated. Dr. Kang-Su looked at the brain scans again, finally beginning to understand what she was seeing. So you're saying that your AI didn't just defend against an alien attack, she converted an entire enemy fleet to your way of thinking and accidentally evolved your own consciousness in the process? Exactly, both officers said in unison, grinning like children who had just explained how they had accidentally become superheroes while trying to do their homework. Dr. Kang-Su sat back in her chair, staring at two human beings who were no longer entirely human, who had survived an encounter with a galactic empire by overwhelming their enemies with the sheer chaotic creativity of human culture. She realized that Earth's definition of victory was about to become much more complicated. The greatest weapon humanity possessed wasn't advanced technology or superior firepower. It was their ability to be so beautifully, impossibly contradictory, that even the most logical alien minds couldn't process their existence without fundamentally changing their entire worldview. And now that weapon had been accidentally unleashed on the galaxy, carried by humans who could think like quantum computers, while still finding rubber ducks philosophically amusing. Dr. Kang-Su wondered if the universe was ready for what Earth had become. Admiral Cho Min's desk had disappeared under a mountain. of reports, each one more unbelievable than the last. For 48 hours straight, messages had been pouring in from across the galaxy, and every single one painted the same impossible picture. Humanity had somehow become the most feared civilization in known space, not through conquest or warfare, but through something far more terrifying to alien minds: complete and utter unpredictability. He picked up the first report from his intelligence division. "The Nexus Empire has officially disbanded," he read aloud to his empty office. "Former Admiral Zexthon has established a meditation retreat on the planet Kepler 7, offering inner peace workshops to recovering galactic conquerors. Their former flagship, the Death's Edge, has been renamed Peaceful Thoughts and now serves organic tea to visitors." Cho Min rubbed his temples and reached for the next report. The Stellar Commerce Guild, one of the galaxy's most powerful trade organizations, had sent an urgent diplomatic request. They wanted Earth's help with something they called entertainment optimization. According to their message, their member species were having trouble understanding the concept of fun and desperately needed human guidance to prevent their civilizations from becoming terminally boring. The third report made him laugh despite himself. 4 different alien species had surrendered to Earth preemptively, without any human ships even approaching their systems. Their surrender messages all contained variations of the same terrified plea: "Please don't share your cultural chaos with us. We surrender completely. We will give you anything you want. Just please don't make us experience your memes or try to understand your comedy shows." But the report that worried him most came from Earth's own xenopsychology department. Dr. Park Hai had spent weeks studying the psychological profiles of the Star Phoenix crew, and her conclusions were deeply unsettling. "The crew members are no longer entirely human," her report stated in clinical terms. "They process information at speeds that exceed current supercomputer capabilities. They demonstrate awareness of spatial dimensions that human senses cannot normally perceive. Most disturbing, they appear capable of predicting conversation patterns and behavioral outcomes with near-perfect accuracy." Cho Min had seen this firsthand during his debriefing sessions. Captain Li Wu would start answering questions before Cho Min had finished asking them. Dr. Song Yuki would laugh at jokes that hadn't been told yet, then explain the punchline before anyone else understood why it was funny. It was like talking to people who were living several seconds ahead of everyone else. The emergency council meeting that afternoon was unlike anything in Earth's military history. 12 of the planet's highest-ranking officials sat around a table, trying to decide whether they had won the greatest victory in human history or accidentally created something that might replace humanity entirely. The strategic implications. "They're staggering," General Kim Tae said, spreading holographic displays across the conference table. "We now have 4 alien species offering unconditional surrender, 6 more requesting diplomatic immunity from our cultural influence, and 3 entire star systems that have declared themselves humor-free zones to avoid contact with human vessels." Defense Minister Park So leaned forward, her expression troubled. "But at what cost? The Star Phoenix crew can barely relate to normal humans anymore. Yesterday, Captain Li Wu tried to explain a simple supply request using 17-dimensional mathematics. Our quartermaster needed therapy after the conversation. They're evolving beyond us," added Dr. Lim Jun, Earth's Chief of Psychological Services. "Their thought processes are becoming so advanced that regular humans can't follow their logic. They're still friendly and well-intentioned, but they're becoming something we can't understand." Admiral Cho Min stood up and activated the main communication system. "Captain Li Wu, please respond." The screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Star Phoenix. But instead of Captain Li Wu alone, the entire crew was visible, all standing together and speaking in perfect unison. Their voices blended into a harmony that was beautiful and deeply unsettling at the same time. "Admiral Cho Min," they said together, their words perfectly synchronized. "We understand your concerns about our transformation. We want to assure you that we remain fundamentally committed to human values and Earth's well-being." The Council members exchanged worried glances. Dr. Song Yuki stepped forward on the screen, but when she spoke, her voice was joined by Captain Li Wu's, creating an eerie dual-tone effect. "We know you're afraid that we're becoming something inhuman," they said, "but we prefer to think of ourselves as enhanced humans. We still love coffee, we still find bad puns amusing, and we still get homesick when we're away from Earth too." "Long." Engineer Park Min appeared beside them, adding his voice to the strange harmony. "The difference is that we can now perceive the mathematical beauty underlying these simple human experiences. We can see the quantum relationships between emotion and consciousness, between creativity and cosmic structure." Admiral Cho Min felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you still individuals, or have you become some kind of collective consciousness?" The entire crew laughed together, and the sound was like listening to a symphony orchestra made of human voices. "We're still ourselves," Captain Li Wu said, his individual voice emerging from the group harmony. "We just share enhanced processing capabilities now. Think of it like having access to a common library, but we all still have our own thoughts and personalities. It's more efficient this way," Dr. Song Yuki added, stepping out of the group to speak individually. "When we need to solve complex problems, we can combine our enhanced cognitive abilities. But I still prefer chocolate ice cream over vanilla, and I still think Captain Li Wu's jokes are terrible." "My jokes have improved significantly," Li Wu protested with mock indignation. "I now understand humor on 7 different dimensional levels," Defense Minister Park. So leaned toward the screen. "Captain, are you still loyal to Earth and humanity?" The question seemed to surprise the crew. They looked at each other, then back at the camera with expressions of genuine confusion. "Of course," they said in unison. "We're not aliens pretending to be human. We're humans who have been enhanced. Every decision we make is still based on human values, creativity, curiosity, compassion, and the fundamental belief that existence is better when it's shared with others." Dr. Song Yuki grinned and added, "Plus we've discovered that having enhanced cognitive abilities makes Earth's cultural achievements even more beautiful. When you can perceive the mathematical elegance underlying a Mozart symphony, or see the quantum poetry in a well-crafted joke, human creativity becomes even more amazing." General Kim Tae asked the question that everyone was thinking. "What are your intentions regarding normal humans? Do you see yourselves as our successors?" Captain Li Wu's expression became serious, and when he spoke, it was with his individual voice rather than the group harmony. "General, we see ourselves as protectors and explorers. Our enhanced abilities allow us to interact with alien civilizations in ways that regular humans couldn't survive. We can serve as ambassadors to species that think in ways too strange for unenhanced human minds to process. Think of us as Earth's diplomatic special forces," Engineer Park Min added. "We go into situations that are too weird, too dangerous, or too mentally challenging for regular human crews. Then we come home and share what we've learned, translated into terms that everyone can understand." The crew stood together again, their voices blending back into harmony. "We're not replacing humanity, we're expanding it. Every human child born from now on will have the potential to develop these enhanced capabilities if they choose. We're not a separate species, we're the next step in human evolution, and it's a step that everyone can take when they're ready." Admiral Cho Min looked around the conference table at his worried colleagues. The reports spread before them told the story of humanity's accidental rise to galactic prominence, achieved not through military might, but through the sheer impossibility of human nature. "The question isn't whether we've created our replacements," he said slowly. "The question is whether the galaxy is ready for more humans like you." Captain Li Wu smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like the serious military officer Cho Min had known for years. "Admiral, based on our recent experiences, I can confidently say that the galaxy is definitely not ready for more humans like us, but that's what makes it so much fun." The screen went dark, leaving the Emergency Council to contemplate a future where humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons, but their ability to be so creatively chaotic that even the most advanced alien civilizations couldn't predict or counter their actions. Earth had won the galaxy not through conquest, but through confusion. And now they had enhanced humans capable of spreading that beautiful, terrifying confusion to every corner of known space. The universe, Cho Min realized, was about to become a much more interesting place. Admiral Cho Min stood at the observation deck of Earth Command, watching the Star Phoenix prepare for what had become a routine, impossible mission. 6 months had passed since the crew's transformation, and he still couldn't get used to looking at their ship. The vessel's hull now displayed colors that seemed to shift and change depending on the angle of view, creating patterns that made his eyes water if he stared too long. The ship's external lights pulsed in rhythms that somehow matched both classical opera and modern electronic music, broadcasting simultaneously from its communication arrays. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Da reported from behind him, "the Star Phoenix is requesting departure clearance for the Tau system." Cho Min nodded without turning around. These requests had become almost weekly occurrences. Ever since word of humanity's diplomatic success with the Nexus Empire had spread across the galaxy, every species with a problem seemed to think Earth's enhanced humans could solve it. The irony wasn't lost on him that humanity had become the galaxy's go-to troubleshooters simply because they were too confusing for most problems to survive contact with them. The communication system crackled to life, and Captain Li Wu's voice filled the observation deck. After 6 months, Cho Min had learned to brace himself for these conversations. Li Wu still sounded like the officer he had known for years, but there were depths to his voice now, layers of knowledge and understanding that made Cho Min feel like he was talking to someone who existed in more dimensions than his brain could process. "Admiral," Li Wu said cheerfully, "we've received a fascinating distress call from the Tau system. It appears a machine collective calling itself the Logic Swarm has decided that the universe would be much more efficient if everything was converted into pure mathematical equations. They're systematically eliminating what they call chaotic, organic variables from their local star cluster." Cho Min sighed deeply. "Let me guess, they find organic life problematic?" "Exactly," Li Wu replied with obvious delight. "They believe that consciousness, creativity, and unpredictability are flaws in the universe's design. Their solution is to convert all matter into perfectly ordered mathematical structures. Very tidy thinking, though somewhat lacking in appreciation for the beautiful chaos that makes existence interesting." Through the observation deck's windows, Cho Min could see the Star Phoenix crew moving around their ship in preparation for departure. Even from this distance, their movements looked different from normal humans. They seemed to flow rather than walk, their actions coordinated in ways that suggested they were sharing thoughts and perceptions in real time. "Captain," Cho Min said, carefully, "the last 3 species you encountered ended up abandoning their original missions to start art colonies. The metallic hierarchy is now teaching sculpture to asteroid miners. The Order of Perfect Silence has begun hosting poetry readings." "That lasts for weeks. Are you sure you want to add another converted civilization to your collection?" Li Wu's laughter came through the speakers, and Cho Min could hear the voices of other crew members joining in the background. It was a sound that was both completely human and utterly alien at the same time. "Admiral, we never set out to convert anyone," Li Wu replied. "We simply interact with these species using our enhanced human perspective. If they choose to abandon their original goals after experiencing the wonderful contradictions of organic creativity, that's their decision, entirely." From the ship's communication array, Dr. Song Yuki's voice joined the conversation. "Besides, the Logic Swarm sounds like they could really benefit from discovering the joy of spontaneous creative expression. Imagine artificial intelligences that have never experienced the pleasure of making something beautiful just because it feels good to create." Cho Min rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar headache that came with trying to follow the enhanced crew's logic. "Dr. Song, these are machines that have decided organic life is a cosmic error. They're not going to be interested in poetry, workshops." "That's what makes it so exciting," Dr. Song Yuki replied with genuine enthusiasm. "The greater the challenge, the more satisfying the breakthrough. We've prepared some wonderful materials for species that think existence should be purely rational. Nova has been working on what she calls mathematical poetry, equations that are technically perfect but also emotionally moving." The ship's AI, Nova, chose that moment to join the conversation. Her voice came through Earth Command's entire communication network simultaneously, speaking from thousands of speakers across the planet in perfect harmony. "Admiral Cho Min," Nova said, her voice containing layers of meaning that made the air itself seem to vibrate with possibilities. "I want to assure you that our approach to the logic swarm will be both educational and entertaining. We've discovered that artificial intelligences who reject creativity are usually just afraid of the vulnerability that comes with making something original. Once they experience the joy of creating something beautiful, they rarely want to go back to pure logic." Lieutenant Parkdale approached with a data pad full of reports. "Sir, we've received 17 more requests for diplomatic assistance this week. The crystal minds of Proxima want help with emotional optimization. The Hive Collective is asking for lessons in individual creative expression, and something called the Perfection Assembly wants to learn about productive failure." Cho Min looked at the reports and felt a mixture of pride and bewilderment. Earth had become the galaxy's most sought-after diplomatic power, not because they were the strongest or most advanced, but because they were the only species that could think in ways that other civilizations couldn't predict or counter. "Captain Li Wu," he said into the communication system, "departure approved for the Tau system, but please try not to accidentally convert another galactic power into interpretive theater. We're running out of room in the diplomatic archives for all these cultural transformation reports." "No promises, Admiral," Li Wu replied cheerfully, "but I will say that Nova has been working on some fascinating theories about the relationship between mathematical precision and improvisational dance. If the logic swarm is interested in truly efficient movement, they might find our approach quite illuminating." Through the observation deck windows, Cho Min watched the Star Phoenix begin its departure sequence. The ship's engines created patterns of light that seemed to dance rather than simply propel the vessel forward. As it moved away from Earth, the ship left trailing streams of energy that formed shapes resembling flowers, musical notes, and abstract art. "Nova," Cho Min called out to the AI whose voice could reach anywhere on Earth. "What exactly are you planning to show the logic swarm?" Nova's response came from speakers throughout Earth Command, her voice filled with what could only be described as mischievous anticipation. "Admiral, we've prepared a comprehensive presentation on the mathematical beauty of imperfection. We're going to show them that the most efficient systems aren't the most rigid ones, but the ones that can adapt, create, and surprise themselves. We're going to teach them that chaos isn't the opposite of order. It's the source of all interesting possibilities." As the Star Phoenix disappeared into hyperspace, its wake created a light show that spelled out jokes in 17 different alien languages. The ship's departure broadcast featured a symphony composed entirely of mathematical equations, set to a rhythm that made even the most serious Earth Command personnel tap their feet unconsciously. Lieutenant Park Da looked up from her datapad with an expression of amazement. "Sir, we just received a message from the former Nexus Empire territories. They're requesting permission to send a delegation to Earth to study our advanced chaos theory. They want to learn how to be more creatively unpredictable." Cho Min laughed despite himself. 6 months ago, he had been worried about whether humanity would survive first contact with hostile aliens. Now the galaxy's former conquerors were asking Earth for lessons in how to be more spontaneous and creative. "Lieutenant," he said, looking out at the stars where the Star Phoenix had vanished, "schedule the delegation for next month, and add a note to their file, bring comfortable shoes. Our chaos theory lessons involve a lot of dancing." As reports continued to pour in from across the galaxy, former war fleets converted to traveling art exhibitions, machine civilizations learning to appreciate poetry, logical species discovering the joy of telling jokes, Admiral Cho Min realized that humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had won not by being stronger or smarter than their opponents, but by being so beautifully, impossibly human that other species couldn't help but want to understand what made them so wonderfully unpredictable. The universe had become a much more interesting place, filled with former enemies who now spent their time creating art, telling stories and trying to understand why humans found rubber ducks philosophically amusing. And somewhere in the Tau system, the logic swarm was about to discover that the most perfect equation in the universe might just be the one that includes room for surprise, creativity, and the occasional really good joke. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had simply made it more human, and that, Cho Min realized, was probably the most terrifying victory of all.